Hello and welcome back to another week of Ironman training. If you're new, I walk you through my entire week of training to get ready for Ironman Wales in September. So I hope you enjoy it and you find it helpful. Starting off on Monday, I didn't have any training scheduled for today. For the last couple of weeks, I've been jiggling my sessions around a bit, doing the sessions scheduled for the Monday on the Sunday instead, when I don't have to work and so have a lot more free time. I did still commute into work this day and it was absolutely freezing. I'm going to have to sort something out as I literally couldn't feel my fingers for about 15 minutes despite wearing a decent pair of gloves. I think I'm going to look into buying some glove liners to wear as well, but if you have any other suggestions, please do let me know them in the comments down below. Not much more to say about Monday, so moving on to Tuesday, I woke up with a bit of a headache, which I'm putting down to being a bit too warm in the bedroom overnight. Nonetheless, I had a bike session on the plan, but decided to change it up a bit. If you're not familiar with Trainer Road, which is the platform I'm using for my training, there are different levels of workouts, which are a subjective assessment of how hard a workout is likely to be. These are achievable, productive, stretch, breakthrough, and not recommended. The session in the calendar was a stretch workout, so it was likely to be quite tough. As I had a bit of a headache still, I decided to drop it down to something very similar, but of a productive level instead. The session ended up being tempo intervals with just 30 seconds of rest, if you can call it that, in between. Though this is simply not enough time to rest as the heart rate barely drops before coming back up, but it's definitely welcomed in terms of mentally breaking up the intervals into those smaller chunks. Despite the headache, I was glad to get this one ticked off. On Wednesday, I had a run to do, and it was something a bit different that I wouldn't normally expect to see on a half or a full distance triathlon plan. After a brief 10-minute warm-up, I had to do 10 30-second sprints with 2-minute recovery after each, of which I walked. The first few felt okay, but my hamstrings started to cramp up towards the second half. I'm not really a fan of sprinting, and I can definitely tell that I don't do it very often, as I was absolutely wrecked afterwards. My hamstrings got really tight later in the day and I didn't have much time to stretch afterwards as I cycled into work again. If I were to do a similar session again, I'd probably be inclined to do it later in the day when my body has had a chance to wake up a bit, as this was done just before 5:30 a.m. On Thursday, I woke up and my hamstrings were absolutely killing me. They were so tight that even trying to walk normally was a challenge. Thankfully, on this day, I actually went swimming, so I had a bit of time in the morning to have a good stretch before the pool opened. The swim was nothing special, just 2.2k of base lengths. My technique did feel a bit all over the place at times, but I managed to average 137 per 100. Something I'm going to make an effort on doing going forward is actually practice my technique with the swim bands I got last year, but have hardly used, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. My legs were still feeling really tight later in the day, so I went for a bit of a walk at lunch to try and loosen them out a bit. I also decided to move a run workout to the evening that was scheduled for the Friday, again to try and shake the legs out a bit. I did have to modify the session a bit because of the tightness, so I did just 30 minutes, really easy, while listening to a new podcast I've been enjoying recently, and that is called Run It 3 Ways. I missed off the final 10 minutes and 2 uphill short sprints that was on the scheduled session because of the tightness, but I'd make up for the time that I missed during my longer run at the weekend. I woke up on Friday with the hammies again still feeling really tight despite making an effort to do some half decent stretching, and I definitely felt it on the bike. The session was lower end sweet spot intervals, again with only 30 seconds in between, so it's a pretty solid effort throughout. I really noticed how tight my hamstrings were, which definitely affected the session, but I still managed to get it done. I went for another walk at lunch, really just to get a bit of fresh air in the sunlight, and it's something I've been quite enjoying. My plan is to go for a lunch walk Monday to Friday, regardless of whether I'm at home or at the office. Not for a training benefit or anything like that, but just because it's something nice to do. On Saturday, I did my longer run of the week, with the planned session being an hour of just base running, but I wanted to mix it up a bit as I have the half marathon in early March. It's been a while since I've run around that sort of mileage at half marathon pace, so I wanted to do a bit more today. So I ended up doing a bit of a longer one, finishing with 14.5k in total. To spice it up a bit, I ran down to Rock Park, nice and steady, and then did the Bartsville Park run. I intended to run it at around half marathon pace, but I ended up going a bit too fast at around 10k pace instead. It was hard not to go full blast like I normally do, as quite a few people passed me at the beginning, but I kept a nice consistent pace and managed to pass quite a few people around the park and ended up finishing 11th out of around 150 people. Without any rest other than scanning my barcode, I ran back home again at a steady pace. On Sunday, I again did the bike session that was planned for the Monday. My left hamstring was still a little tight, but definitely a lot better than it had been the last few days. The session was 3 minute sweet spot intervals that varied slightly in power, again with just 30 seconds in between. At least in this one I had 90 seconds of recovery after 4 of the intervals, allowing my heart rate to come back down a bit. Looking at next week's training, I have more sprints scheduled, but I think I'll pass on them as I don't want another week of the legs feeling really tight. Instead, I think I'll do a half marathon specific session, as again, I have the Bideford half marathon in early March, and of course, the half as part of Outlaw Half Nottingham in May. So that's the week's training all wrapped up. If you haven't yet watched the previous week's video, I'll leave that on screen for you to watch next. The next few videos will include another training recap, a review of the tool I've been using to dry my wet trainers, and a look into my shoe rotation for this year. So be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for those. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.